You know, with that motor in here, the air cleaner on the carburetor stock intake, it looked like the thing is too low. Heck, there's about 2 foot of room between. Sure is hot out there. I think I'm gonna stay in here. I'm gonna set the old truck on the ground and take that radiator out, mess around a little bit, see what I get into. She's coming together, itching to drive it. Track car and put it together. And then I'm going to cut down this piece of threaded rod, which was destined for a boring life of holding up AC ducts in a building, but I'm going to give it much more excitement than that. You know, with that motor in here, the air cleaner on the carburetor stock intake, it looked like the thing is too low. Heck, there's about 2 foot of room between the top of the air cleaner and the hood there. So I noticed at the junkyard, you get a handy little spacer off 4.3 Chevrolets, Astros, or pickups or whatnot. I'm gonna put that on there and then put the air cleaner on top of it. I did that on my old Chevy truck. It seems to look a little better to me. And since I got an extra filter, I'm gonna stack it like a Midwest dirt track car and put it together. And then I'm going to cut down this piece of threaded rod, which was destined for a boring life of holding up AC ducts in a building, but I'm going to give it much more excitement than that. I was digging through my carburetor Quadrajet parts and looking for this piece so I can convert the automatic choke, which is on the motor, to a manual choke, because it has a cool knob on the dash in the truck that says C on it. Might as well have a manual choke. But I found some of these and it occurred to me I might mention it. These are the secondary metering rods, which pull up out of a jet that they sit in while the secondaries are closed. Once they pull out, as the secondary door opens, it becomes a jet. The nice thing about Quadrajets is you can tune your secondaries by just changing these rods based on what your motor needs. Most later 70s, early 80s stuff has big fat rods, so they're real lean when the 4 barrels are open. And there's I don't know how many different ones, but they're labeled on the side. This one here is labeled DU, and if you measure the tip, which is what's out when the secondary door is open all the way, that one measures 34 thousandths. I forget what size the hole is that they sit in, but that's probably one of the most richest rods. Here's an EH, which is kind of middle of the road one. That one measures 69 thousandths. It's a big difference. Here's some I made myself. Those measure about 37. I made them on a lathe. And here's some CHs. Those are 57. You find these in old Cadillacs and Buicks. And try to save as many of those as I can. I think I mentioned in the last clip these were middle of the road. That's probably the largest, leanest ones are up there among them. Some of these others here measure in the 50 range, so those are probably more in the middle of the road. And you can see how they're tapered differently. You can fine-tune how much fuel comes in as your secondaries open. You know, with 3/4 throttle. If it's tapered more, it'll be leaner. There's a lot more to it than what I just said, but I've never been such a great tuner that I could tell the difference between the tapers. Alright, Mrs. Heavy Chevy, would you kindly check the operation of the driver's side vent?
Open. Close.
Oh, be doggone. Alright, we got our manual choke rigged up. I still need to come up with something better right there. I looked all through my stash and couldn't find nothing. And we may need to shorten the stud for the air cleaner. Not sure. Mrs. Heavy Chevy's out here asking me so many questions, I finally had to tell her.
Watch the video!
Would you tighten up that wing nut, Mrs. Heavy Chevy?
You must think I have all week to do this.
Well, you can't cut the stud and then put the wing nut. It could be a burr, so you got to run the nut down and then cut it off.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. While she's doing that, maybe we could have sufficient time to discuss the meaning of life. Or which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Well, obviously, the egg. I mean the chicken.
I suppose I could have measured that and cut it off and then took the burr off on the grinder. Say, it looks empty in there.
But it did. It's pretty filled up now.
I still say there's room for a big block. Well, I didn't get as much done as I hoped today, but I did get the oil pressure line run, the manual choke rigged up. Mrs. Heavy Chevy helped out putting the wing nut down on the carburetor stud there.
Thanks, babe.
We cut that off. And just coming along. Won't be long, we'll be able to drive that joker.